Hi, I'm Thea. My sister got pregnant. For the fifth time. My mom turned to me and shouted, "This is your real job!" I'd already raised 4 kids that weren't mine. I'd already buried my dreams in that house, under laundry piles and fake thank yous. But the day my mother sold my first design contract at her garage sale, called it practice paper, something inside me stopped asking to be seen. How does a woman go from invisible to untouchable? Let me show you. Sunday afternoon. Backyard folding chairs creaked under uncles with full bellies. Kids tore across the lawn like wild raccoons, and the air smelled like burnt hot dogs and sweet iced tea. Mom was at the grill, flipping meat with the same spatula she used for pancakes. Maylene was late, as usual. I was holding Lux on my hip, balancing a juice pouch and trying not to spill ketchup on my only clean shirt. The family BBQ always looked the same: plastic plates, checkered tablecloths, too much noise. What didn't show was that I'd been temporarily living here for 3 years. They all called it helping out. I called it unpaid labor with no benefits. Maylene finally walked in, sunglasses on, glowing. Not from the sun, from something else. Her hand went straight to her stomach. I felt it before she said anything. That smug little smile she wore when she was about to drop something big, like a punchline she thought everyone would laugh at. And they did. "I'm pregnant," she sang, fake modesty in her voice. "Again." Applause. Cheers. Claps like a small-town pageant winner just got crowned. I didn't move. My throat went dry. My hand tightened around Lux's juice box until it squirted down my arm. I handed it off to Corey without speaking. In my head, alarms were screaming. Diapers, night feedings, homework, emergency room runs for asthma attacks. My portfolio collecting dust on a shelf while I made peanut butter sandwiches and sewed Halloween costumes. Nobody noticed me freeze. That's the thing about being useful. People don't look up unless you stop moving. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to make a scene. I just sat down slowly, like my legs had turned into cold soup. But after a minute, I said, softly, carefully, like it might break the furniture, "I might need to step back this time." Silence. Then Mom turned around. Genova Caldwell, queen of control, with her silver curls tied back and her apron smeared with mustard. "You don't have a husband. You don't have a life. This is your real job." Her voice cut through the yard like a cracked belt. And just like that, I wasn't a guest. I wasn't family. I was the help, and I'd just asked for time off. Nobody spoke. Maylene adjusted her sunglasses. Judson chuckled under his breath. Even the kids stopped yelling. Inside my head, I screamed. If this was a job, where was the paycheck, the dental plan, the thank you speech? But I said none of it. I just sat there while the hot dogs kept burning. Eventually, I excused myself to the bathroom, not that anyone noticed. Closed the door, leaned on the sink, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize the face staring back. I saw a woman who'd traded design school for bedtime stories, who hadn't completed a client pitch in over a year, who answered to Auntie T more than her own name. My phone buzzed, a text from Tara. "Did you send the draft yet? They're waiting." I hadn't. Again, another missed chance. Another deadline I didn't meet because someone needed snacks or got gum in their hair. Back in the guest room, because it was still temporary, I collapsed on the old pull-out couch. I reached under the pillow and felt something crisp. It was the graduation invite from Tara. The one I never RSVP'd to. The one I swore I'd make it to 3 years ago, back when Maylene first said, "Just until I get back on my feet." 3 weeks, she'd said. Just 3. 3 years later, I was still here. $3,000 drained from my savings. My dream of opening a freelance studio still in limbo. The email from that potential client, never answered. Half a portfolio. A full-time invisible role. I didn't cry. I stared at the card, then slipped it back under the pillow like a note to a version of myself I hadn't seen in a while. "This was never temporary," I whispered. I just didn't want to see it. The honor assembly was 2 days ago, but it hadn't left me. Corey stood up on stage in her little plaid skirt, clutching a laminated certificate that read, Most Consistent Student. She looked proud. She should have been. I'd packed her lunch every morning, checked her homework, practiced spelling with her on the back of receipts while waiting in car lines. I was the one who got the school emails, signed her permission slips, reminded her of the library deadlines. But it wasn't my name they called. It was Mom's. She stepped up to the stage like she'd been rehearsing all week, smiled, waved, took the mic and thanked the school staff for recognizing the hard work it takes to raise kids right. She said, It's been a blessing to guide them through thick and thin. Then she turned and held Corey's hand like she was a pageant coach soaking up the win. My name, not mentioned. I stood behind the folding chairs at the back of the cafeteria, juice stain on my sleeve. Balled-up napkin in my hand. I watched people I didn't know nod at her like she was some angel walking on linoleum. My signature was on Corey's registration form, her emergency contacts, the after-school pickup list. But it was her name in the program. Parents walked by, smiled at Mom, told her what a role model she was. Some even asked how she did it all. I clapped with the rest of them. Not because I wanted to, because Corey was smiling, because she was proud, and I wouldn't be the one to ruin that. But inside, I was hollowing out. It's not enough to do the work, I thought. You have to market the martyrdom. The next afternoon was Deacon's birthday, backyard again. Paper streamers hung between fence posts, half-deflated balloons flapping in the breeze. I asked Mom that morning if she needed help with anything. She waved me off. I've got it covered. You've been doing too much. By 3 o'clock, the kids were running around with icing on their faces. Judson was already 3 beers deep. I was holding a solo cup filled with Sprite and standing by the cooler when Mom clinked her fork against a glass. Everybody, she called out. Real quick, funny story. She looked right at me. I told Thea to bring the cake. Guess she forgot again. Laughter exploded like a popped balloon. People turned. Some chuckled politely. Others looked straight through me. I didn't laugh. I didn't speak. I just stood there while my skin itched with heat and my throat closed in. Later, after everyone left, I opened the fridge. The cake was there, untouched, frosted, perfect, boxed. She never meant for me to bring it. She meant for the joke to land. That was the day I realized humiliation could be planned. I waited until the kids were in bed, knocked on the doorframe of the kitchen where she was wiping down counters like nothing had happened. Why did you lie? I asked. She didn't look up. It's just a joke, Delora. You really need to stop being so sensitive. I stood there for a few seconds, long enough to count her breath, long enough to register the distance in her tone. She wasn't sorry. She didn't think it mattered, but it did. All those tiny moments. The lunches, the costumes, the last-minute school projects. None of it was ever enough to earn a name in the program or the dignity of not being the punchline at a party. That night, I lay in bed with the bedroom door cracked, the hallway light casting shadows across the floor. From the next room, I heard Corey and Deacon whispering, stifling giggles over something on a tablet. I smiled. Then I felt it twist. They needed me. They counted on me. But they didn't know me. Not really. I was present, but not real. I rolled over, grabbed my laptop, and opened my email. Drafts folder. 1 tab. Half-written proposal for a logo package. Unfinished. Like everything else I'd started before someone needed a ride to practice or forgot their inhaler, I stared at the blinking cursor. And then I typed out a line. Not for the email, not for anyone else, just a note for myself. Gratitude only matters when it's public. In private, I'm just a name they don't say. Dinner was quiet. Plates scraped, forks clicked. Nobody said much. The kids were already in bed. I could hear Maylene in the living room, laughing too loud on the phone with someone who clearly hadn't heard of boundaries. I sat at the end of the table, the same spot I always did. The sink was full of dishes, and Mom stood there with her back to me, wiping down the counter like it owed her something. The TV buzzed faintly from the other room. She turned and sighed like I'd been bothering her just by breathing. You know, she said offhand like it was weather, I don't know why you're so sensitive. You've been living here for free for 3 years. It wasn't the words. It was how casual they were. Like it had just occurred to her. like she hadn't said that line in her head 1,000 times, waiting to drop it when she could twist the knife without raising her voice. I pushed my chair back, slow. No slam, no scene. I walked down the hallway, past the pictures on the wall, pictures I wasn't in, opened my bedroom door, reached under the bed, pulled out the manila folder I'd been saving since the day I realized no one else would keep my receipts but me. When I came back into the kitchen, they were still standing there, Mom with a dish towel in her hand. Maylene now in the room too, phone in her back pocket, eyes narrowed like she could already smell the conflict. I laid the folder down on the table, opened it. Inside, copies of Venmo transfers, printed receipts, emails confirming payments, asthma medicine for Lux, school fees for Corey, soccer cleats for Deacon, birthday cupcakes, field trip permission forms, groceries, electric bill top-ups. If this is free, I said, laying each page down like playing cards, I'd hate to see expensive. Mom didn't look. She just shook her head like I was ungrateful. Maylene sneered. She's just trying to make you feel guilty, Mom. I stared at both of them. I wanted to yell, but I didn't. I just watched as my work, laid out in black and white, might as well have been invisible. Because the kind of labor I did didn't count. Not in thank yous, not in credit, not in forgiveness. I left the folder there. Later that night, I went to the garage to dig out my old portfolio. I remembered I had some early logo sketches I could scan for a freelance client who'd reached out the week before. I hadn't followed up yet. Maybe it wasn't too late. The box wasn't there. I moved some old towels, a bin of Christmas ornaments, dusty paint cans. Still nothing. I asked Mom. She barely looked up from her seat. Oh, that box of old papers. I threw that out. It was just clutter. I stood still, didn't move, didn't blink. That notebook had sketches I made in college. Notes from design clients I'd met at coffee shops, scrawled ideas for branding, even a napkin where Corey once drew beside me as I worked. Gone. You didn't even ask, I said, voice low. She went back to her show. Said nothing. Back in my room, I lay on the bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan, turning so slowly it barely moved the air. I wasn't angry in the way they expected. I wasn't going to cry or throw anything. I was hollowing out. That's what they don't tell you, how erasure isn't loud. It's quiet, like forgetting a name, like walking past a person you used to know and not even noticing. That's how women like me disappear, not in protests, but in grocery lists, in daily check-ins, in doing it all and still being the one left out of the photo. I thought about what Maya Angelou said. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And they'd been showing me. I got up, turned on the lamp, opened my laptop, created a new Google Doc. Title, Exit Plan. I didn't have a date, I didn't have a full plan, but I knew I couldn't stay. I started listing things, apartment listings, monthly costs, available design jobs I hadn't applied to, notes on things I needed to reclaim from this house. Every item I typed made my heart beat a little faster, but steadier. It wasn't the leaving that scared me anymore. It was realizing how long I'd stayed. At the top of the document, in bold letters, I typed one more line. Freedom budget, because love doesn't look like this. The rhythm of the house was familiar, too familiar. Steam rose from the stove as I stirred spaghetti in a dented pot. Deacon sat across from me, gluing pipe cleaners onto a tri-fold board for his science project. Corey was scribbling at the far end of the table. The TV in the living room barked something about the evening news, but no one listened. Maylene was nowhere in sight, again. Mom dozed off in the recliner, arms crossed, mouth slightly open. I didn't speak, I just moved, automatically. Dinner, homework, cleanup. Routine had replaced identity. I wasn't angry. Not in the loud way, I was just tired. The kind of tired that made you forget what your own voice sounded like when it wasn't asking, "Did you finish your math?" Or, "Where's your inhaler?" If I disappear tomorrow, I thought, the food might burn. That's it. As I drained the noodles, Corey tugged at my sleeve, holding out a piece of construction paper. Crayon lines crisscrossed the page, a rough drawing of a park. There were 3 stick figures, all with long hair. "This one's you," she said, pointing. "And that's me and Lux. We were at the swings." My chest tightened. In the corner, in messy letters, she'd written, "Me and Mom." I smiled, not big, just enough to let her know I saw it. "You know I'm not," I began, but my voice caught. Mom walked in, eyes still heavy from her nap. She looked at the drawing, took it gently from Corey's hands, then she ripped the corner off. "She's not your mother," she said flatly. "Don't confuse her." The room went silent. Corey looked down at her shoes. I didn't yell. I didn't grab the paper. I just picked up the torn piece, folded it, and slipped it into my back pocket. There it was, I told myself. A truth even crayon couldn't deny, and they still tore it apart. Later that night, I sat on the floor, braiding Lux's hair while she sat between my knees. She was half asleep, swaying gently with each pass of the comb. She asked, so softly I almost didn't catch it, "Auntie T, when's your birthday?" I stopped. I genuinely couldn't remember the last time anyone had acknowledged it. A few years back, Tara had brought cupcakes to my job, but that was just because I mentioned it in passing. At home? Nothing. Not a card? Not even a joke about getting older. "It's just another day, honey," I said, keeping my voice steady. Lux blinked up at me. "That's sad." I held her a little tighter. "Not when you're here." Once they were all asleep, I went back to my room and shut the door. I didn't bother turning on the overhead light. The hallway's glow crept under the door, just enough to make out the shape of the ceiling fan. I stared at it, unmoving. I was raising these kids, waking up when they cried, showing up for school conferences, packing snacks, reminding them to brush teeth, kissing bruises. But they wouldn't remember me as their mom. They'd remember me as Auntie T, the one who made sure the lights stayed on. And when they grew up, they'd say, "Our mom worked hard, Grandma did everything." Because that's the story they were being told. That's what would stick. I wondered if maybe invisibility was safer, less painful than being seen only when convenient. Next morning, I skipped breakfast with the family, said I had a migraine. No one asked questions. I didn't refill the milk, didn't pack the lunches, didn't fold the towels stacked on the dryer. No one said anything. That's when I realized they'd gotten used to me giving, not speaking. Back in my room, I pulled a crumpled grocery receipt from my purse, flipped it over, and began scribbling notes. Studio apartments within 20 miles, estimated rent, utilities, deposit, design jobs, remote, part-time, temp. It wasn't an escape plan, it was a re-entry plan. Back into my life. I'd been orbiting theirs long enough. Thea didn't need to explode, she just needed to fade. And so I did. I skipped small talk, no longer volunteered for birthday cupcakes or dance costumes. I went to my room early, shut the door before they could ask for anything. "It's not a big exit," I wrote on the back of that receipt. "It's a slow fade, and no one's even looking." I woke up that morning and didn't expect anything. Not a card, not a cupcake, not a single happy birthday. I'd trained myself to treat it like any other Tuesday. You get tired of being disappointed. Dinner came and went like usual. Kids arguing over who got the last dinner roll, Mom half watching a crime show from the living room. After the plates were cleared, she slid an envelope across the table like she was tipping a waitress. No eye contact, just a grunted, "Here." Inside was a gift card to a local department store. Wrinkled, cheap. One of those pick-any-amount cards with no receipt. I smiled like I always did, tucked it into my wallet, and pretended to be surprised. Later, when I checked the balance online, I saw it had been reloaded from my own debit card. Same card I used for groceries. The shared account I'd set up when Maylene said she couldn't cover food stamps one month. "They gifted me back what I earned," I muttered. "How generous." The next morning, I printed out the reload confirmation, slipped it into my bag, said nothing at breakfast. It wasn't until late afternoon, when Mom was folding towels in the hallway, that I stepped in front of her and held up the paper. "Why did you reload this with my own money?" I asked, calm. "Direct." She looked confused for a second, then waved her hand. "It's just a little gift. It's the thought that counts." "No," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Stop calling it a gift if it costs me more to receive it." She blinked, then walked away. That was it. No argument, no defense, just silence. And the silence wasn't sad. It wasn't cold. It was deliberate. A message. One I understood too well. Later that evening, after the kids went to bed and the dishes were ignored like always, I began packing small things, slowly, quietly, items that wouldn't be missed right away. My portfolio folder, chargers, a framed quote Tara had gifted me years ago. The light stuff. I started treating the house like a hotel. Not mine, just a place I was staying for a while. No more sweeping the back porch without being asked. No more instinctively checking lunch bags or signing homework logs. Being helpful was no longer a reflex. The next blow came through a text from Maylene. "Hey, Judson's between jobs. Can he crash with you a few nights?" I didn't respond. I read the message twice, closed it, tossed the phone on my bed, and made tea. The next morning, while I was restocking a shelf in my studio with design books, Judson showed up in person. No warning, no courtesy. "You got space?" he said. "It's just temporary." That evening, I walked into the kitchen while he was watching TV and set something on the table in front of him. A bent key, my old bedroom key from the house, twisted from years of turning locks that never led to safety. "This is the key I used to survive that place," I told him. "Bent from use, not from breaking." He didn't say anything. I continued. "He doesn't need a place. He needs accountability." Maylene stood behind him, arms crossed. "You always think you're better than us," she said. "No," I answered. "I just finally know what I'm worth." The next day, I returned to my studio, locked the door behind me, and stood in the middle of the room for a long time. Then I walked over to my desk, pulled out my freelance calendar, and drew a thick line across it. Start to finish, Monday through Sunday. "These hours are mine," I whispered, "and they are not negotiable." I stuck a yellow post-it on the edge of the monitor. 3 words. Quiet is a decision. That night, I didn't answer any texts, didn't return a call from Mom. I just sat with a glass of water and thought about how boundaries aren't always declarations. Sometimes they're just absence, a declined invitation, a door that doesn't reopen, a favor not offered. No need to burn bridges. I just won't walk back over them. I drove back to the house to grab my laptop charger. I didn't want to stay long, just in and out, but when I walked through the front door, it felt like stepping into a different kind of cold. No one said hi. Not Corey, not Deacon. Judson glanced at me from the couch and then went back to his phone. Maylene passed me in the hallway like I wasn't there. Genova stood at the stove, stirring something too thick and too loud. The scraping of the spoon echoed like it was meant to drown out everything else. Silence is no longer neutral, I thought. It's loaded, targeted. I kept my tone measured. "I just came to get my charger." She didn't look at me, just slammed the drawer shut and said, "You act like you're better than all of us. You're not." I could have bit back. Instead, I told the truth. "I never said that. I just stopped pretending I was fine." Then she turned. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut like a broken knife. "Then maybe you're not part of this family anymore." A pause. "You're no daughter of mine." I didn't reply, didn't cry, just walked out the same way I came in, holding my charger like it was a lifeline. But something broke under my ribs as I pulled the door shut behind me. Back at the studio, I didn't sit down right away. I just stood there in the middle of the room, staring at nothing. Everything echoed. The hum of the fridge, the faint sound of traffic outside. My own breath. It's a strange kind of grief, being orphaned while your mother's still alive. I pulled out a box of old photos from under my bed, ones I'd scanned and kept for myself. A few of them were cut at the edges, others had writing scratched out. In half of them, I was missing. Not physically, just cropped out. I remembered being 10, crying after school because a teacher yelled at me. I'd come home and tried to explain. Genova had said, "You're too sensitive." "You always are." I remembered being 22, coming back from my first failed internship, saying I wanted to switch careers. She said, "Stick to what's stable. You're not built for the chaos." And here I was, built for everything but acknowledgement. I didn't cry because of her. I cried because I'd done everything right. Played nice, took the hits, stayed helpful, and it still wasn't enough. Later that night, Corey video called me from her room. Lux was in pajamas, already tucked in. Corey was helping her wind down. I smiled, asked how school was. Lux yawned and blinked at the screen. Then softly, "Are you coming home, Mommy?" The screen froze for a second. Corey gently corrected her, whispering, "No, baby, that's Auntie T." I didn't correct anyone. I didn't say a word. I just smiled and said, "I love you more than you know." After the call ended, I dropped the phone to the floor and sat down on the edge of the mattress. That was the moment everything collapsed. Not from pain, from clarity. I opened my notebook and wrote one question. What do I know now that I didn't know before? I stared at the page, then I filled it. Love can be used as a leash. Guilt is a tool of power. Being needed is not the same as being respected. I picked up my phone and began deleting pictures. Not in anger, not in spite, just survival. Photos of birthday cakes I paid for, science projects I glued together, crayon drawings I saved, gone. They wanted me to be grateful for the chains, I wrote next. I'm not angry anymore, I'm just not theirs. It was past midnight when I saw it. I was scrolling, half laying on the couch, legs over the armrest, bowl of popcorn untouched. The silence in the studio was heavy, but it was my silence, my choice. I liked it better than what passed for conversation at Mom's house. Tawny had posted something. Just words, no photos, no tags. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who only love you when you're useful. I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't need to, because I knew she'd written it for me. And it hurt, in the way truth hurts. Not the truth I needed from someone else, but the truth I wasn't ready to say out loud yet. Within 2 hours, it had been shared by 3 people in town. A local cousin, a church neighbor, someone who once told me, "You're such a blessing to your family." Mom saw it too. Of course she did. Her text came in around 3:17 a.m. "Tell your friend to mind her business." I didn't reply, just screenshot it and moved on. The next day, I had one goal: finish a client mock-up. I'd been putting it off, but my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. There's a strange kind of energy you get when people stop pretending you don't see them for who they are. Midday, I got a voice message from Kellen. He doesn't usually send anything. Most of our exchanges are nods or quiet glances, but this one wasn't small talk. "Auntie T, I think you should hear this. I didn't mean to snoop. They were talking in the kitchen, and I had my phone on me." I hit play. Mom's voice first, sharp, certain. "She just needs a push. She'll come back if we remind her she's needed." Then Maylene. "Guilt always worked before. Let's make her feel like she's abandoning the kids." That's what hit her last time. I paused the recording, sat there with the phone resting on my knee, hands still, breath slow. It's different when you know. When your gut tells you something's off, you brush it away, call it dramatic. But when you hear it, when the words line up exactly with what you feared, it stops being suspicion, it becomes strategy. And once someone starts playing a game with you either fold or you flip the board. I opened my laptop, uploaded the file to my drive, labeled it July Kitchen Audio, then I forwarded it to a second email address, one only Tara knew about. Under the subject line, I typed, "Only use if they come for me again." Not revenge, not exposure, just insurance. Then I typed one more sentence in the body of the email. "If I'm going to be called selfish, I want to make sure it's for something I chose." My phone buzzed again around 5:40. Genova. I let it ring. A few minutes later, Maylene texted, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't you." I almost laughed. They always say that when you finally stop being convenient. This isn't you. Translation. This isn't the version of you we can control. I didn't answer. Instead, I booked a consultation with a design firm in Lexington, remote part-time, contract-based, real work, real pay, no errands. That night, I stayed up late going through my email history, screenshots of grocery orders I paid for, appointment confirmations for the kids, old bank transfers, everything they swore I never did. I kept receipts. Not because I planned to use them, but because I was tired of doubting my own memory. They said I was dramatic. I kept proof. As I gathered the files into a single folder on my desktop, I caught my reflection in the black screen of my monitor. It startled me. Not because I looked bad, because I looked different, focused, still, unapologetic. This time, I wasn't unraveling. I was armoring up, quietly, carefully. I was combing through my inbox, scanning old job threads and junk folders when I found it. A message from a client I'd pitched to last week. Subject line, logo test, next step. They'd asked for a revision. A simple response, due 3 days ago. 3 days ago was when my laptop had been charging at Mom's. I clicked into the email. It was marked read. My heart sank, not in that loud movie scene kind of way. Quiet, like something slipped off a shelf inside me and hit the floor. I walked to the fridge, took out a bottle of water, drank half of it, sat back down. Then I called her. Did you open my laptop while it was at your house? She didn't miss a beat. I thought it was junk mail. I deleted it. You spend too much time on that computer anyway. That's when I knew. She wasn't just ignoring what I wanted, she was actively standing in the way of it. Later that week, I was driving back from a post office run when I passed her street, saw folding tables in the yard. Gay plastic tubs filled with old shoes, a handwritten sign, garage sale. I almost drove past. Almost. But something told me to pull over. There were people browsing, holding coffee cups, kids trailing behind them. I walked toward the last table. A cardboard box labeled MISC paperwork. Inside, a manila folder with a blue post-it stuck to the front. Old junk. I flipped it open, and there it was. My original contract with the coffee shop down on McKinley. My first freelance job. The one that paid me $200 for a logo and a window decal. I had framed that contract once, then tucked it away when space got tight. And now here it was, next to a busted stapler and expired coupons. My name was still on it, sharp, black ink. My design still printed on the mock-up. Mom walked out from the garage just then, saw me holding it. Oh, that! Thought it was just one of those fake things you print for practice. I didn't yell. I folded the contract slowly, placed it back in the folder. This was real, I said. More real than anything you ever gave me. Behind me, someone asked how much the box was. It's not for sale, I said, eyes still locked on hers. I took the folder, grabbed a few other things I recognized, some old bills I'd paid, a notebook with Corey's handwriting on the cover. Nothing dramatic, no confrontation. But people watched. They felt the shift in the air. I didn't need to ruin her sale, I told myself as I slid the papers into my car. I just needed to reclaim what was mine. On the drive back, I passed the corner where I'd parked and cried after landing that very first job. I remembered sitting there, holding the signed contract, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. I'd printed 3 copies. Lux had scribbled on one with a purple crayon. I'd kept it anyway. It wasn't about the money. It was proof I could be something outside of their house, outside of their control. You can't sell a win, I whispered, just because you don't respect it. That night, I sat at my desk, opened a new folder on my computer, scanned the contract, labeled it first. Then I opened my email and typed, subject, boundaries. Recipients, Geneva Caldwell, Maylene Draper. I won't be attending family dinners moving forward. I will no longer be available for errands or personal requests. I will respond only in emergencies involving the children's safety. This is not punishment. This is protection. I hit send. Then I clicked into my client pitch deck and slid the scanned contract into the top position. Proof, real, mine. They burned my bridges for years, I thought. I just stopped rebuilding them. The light from the window hit the side of my face just enough to make me blink. I laid there, listening to nothing, no footsteps, no TV humming in the background. Just silence, the kind I'd fought hard to own. I rolled over to straighten the pillow and felt something stiff tucked inside the case. Pulled it out. Tara's graduation invite, crumpled, yellowing at the corners, but still intact. I had shoved it under there years ago, telling myself I'd go, and then never did. I missed it, buried in errands that weren't mine, in family meals I wasn't thanked for, in chaos I didn't cause but kept cleaning up. Now, holding it didn't sting. It just reminded me. I set it on the edge of my desk, next to a fresh sketch pad I'd been outlining a new project on. Looked at it for a moment and thought, this wasn't the life I planned, but it's one I finally chose. Before I could get back to work, a knock came at the door. When I opened it, I saw Corey. Behind her, Deacon and Lux, carrying backpacks and wide grins. No text, no call, just them. No sign of Maylene's car, either. I stepped aside without asking anything. Mom said we could hang out today, Corey offered. I nodded and poured tea for myself. Cereal for the kids. Sat them around the small table near the window. They told me about school like nothing had changed. Lux held up a crayon drawing of my studio. This is your house, she said. I like it better. It's cozy. I smiled. Didn't say thank you. Didn't have to. There's something about being chosen by a child. It feels cleaner than forgiveness. We talked about their science fair, about the librarian who gives out candy, about how Deacon wants a dog. He reached over his bowl and said, when I grow up, I want to be like you. Then added, matter-of-factly, but not as tired. I didn't flinch, just smiled, said nothing. But inside, something sank and lifted at the same time. I got up, walked to the kitchen to rinse my mug. I used to dream of being admired, I told myself. Now I just want them to have it easier. Strong shouldn't mean stretched thin, shouldn't mean holding everyone up until your own spine folds. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Maylene. The text read, you know, it wouldn't hurt to stop by, for Mom's sake. I didn't delete it, I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen for a moment, then turned the phone over, face down on the counter. I wasn't angry anymore. I'd just stopped volunteering for pain. The door was closed. I hadn't locked it, but I wasn't opening it either. I picked the phone back up and texted Tara. Want to meet the kids next weekend? That evening, I sat at my desk, cleared it off, slowly. I placed 2 things on either side. On the left, the signed contract Genova tried to sell for $5. On the right, the graduation card I never used. Then I printed a cover page for my updated portfolio. Typed in bold, not what they gave me, but what I made anyway. Lux wandered over, dragging a blanket behind her. She pointed at the contract. What's that paper? I looked at her and answered simply, proof.